In the Fellows' Garden of Christ College, Cambridge, lives a lone mulberry tree, with links back to the 17th century and to one of the college's most famous graduates.
So talked the spirited sly snake, and Eve, yet more amazed, unwary, thus replied: Serpent, thy overpraising leaves in doubt the virtue of that fruit in thee first proved. But say, where grows the tree, from hence how far? For many are the trees of God that grow in paradise, and various, yet unknown to us. In such abundance lies our choice as leaves a greater store of fruit untouched, still hanging incorruptible.
How the mulberry tree became linked with Milton is unclear. Surely it must be more than allegorical convenience.
The first mention is in the 18th century, when people were first beginning to link up authors and the landscapes they worked in, because that was a contemporary interest of romantic literature. It was planted in the year of his birth, so that's obviously a direct connection that will make people think of Milton. And because of that, it would have been a young tree when he was here.
The tree would certainly not have been famous in the day of Milton. Some people have tried to rationalise the connection by saying perhaps Milton sat in its shade composing some of his early works, but later on Charles Darwin was here. As far as I know, nobody's ever tried to connect the tree to Charles Darwin and suggest he composed The Origin of Species while he was sitting in the shade of the mulberry tree. So it is pure speculation why Milton, if you like, gets the credit for this and Darwin gets none at all.
Though affectionately referred to as a bush by the 18th century American melody, the mulberry is in fact a fine tree, both botanically and in stature. Although a solitary character in the garden today, the arrival of this mulberry tree at Christ College was not a singular affair, but the result of a planned mass planting by James I.
The king wanted to establish the silk industry, which meant mulberry trees, and so he asked people with large gardens to plant mulberry trees. And Oxford and Cambridge colleges were obvious people with large gardens.
The king, in fact, sent a letter to the Lord Lieutenants of each county to buy, at their expense, a lot of mulberry trees and then resell them for a farthing, I think, for 3 trees. And he also said, you know, that it would please him greatly and be a sign of great affection if they themselves would plant some mulberry trees on their own land.
We know that a man came round and the college paid for 300 mulberry plants 18 shillings, which was quite a fair amount of money in the year 1608. And then a college servant named Troilus, who also appears in the accounts, he was paid 12 pence for setting the mulberry plants and doing some other work in the college. What happened to all the 300 we do not know. We certainly have not got 300 mulberry trees.
By the nature of early 17th century economic projects, its scale was not necessarily matched by the competence with which it was carried out.
The differences between the black and the white mulberry are in fact quite marked. The main difference from a distance is the shape of the tree. The black mulberry making quite a low dome-shaped tree, whereas the white mulberry is far more erect. Once you've seen the differences, then it's quite apparent, and I can't see how anybody could get confused.
This tree, in fact, is a black mulberry tree, which was actually quite useless for silk production.
White mulberry is crucial to the production of silk, simply because the silkworms will eat nothing else. Now, why we ended up with so many black mulberry trees is an open question. Had such a debacle occurred today, then questions would have been asked in the House about how public monies could have been so wasted. I'm sure there were a lot of people with faces just as red as the juice that comes out of mulberries when it was realised that they'd spent all this lovely lolly on really acres and acres of useless trees.
What the silkworms lost, the fellows and the members of the college gained, because the mulberries make wonderful mulberry jam.
While students are enjoying their summer recess, college gardeners harvest the tree's fruit under the watchful gaze of the city's tourists.
It is a fact that a black mulberry was planted on this spot in the time of James I. I personally doubt if the branches that you see today are that old. There has been a cycle of growth and decay, and a new sprout from the base then took over. So the tree that we are sat in front of today, whilst not being the leaves and branches not being exactly the ones that were around in James I's time, the essential tree that is here could be the same tree that was planted on this spot all those centuries ago.
This tree, in fact, I find is a very good place to come and contemplate and think over things that one is confused about in one's work, and just have a wander around every now and then on a Sunday afternoon and go around the tree, and hopefully when one returns to work things are a little clearer. I think the mulberry tree is one of the star attractions of the garden, if you like. There's nothing that really has this resonance and this history to it.
To the college, the Milton mulberry is much more than a relic of James I's ill-conceived silk industry. This venerable old tree is venue for reflection, recital and music, and is set to stay a focal point of college life for generations of students to come.
With a prize fund of £75,000 and an offer of 100 concert engagements across the world, it's well worth winning the Leeds Piano Competition. Stay with us for the second concerto performance of this year's finals next.